Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coronavirus Update 28. I am Ryan Fran, the Chief Communications Officer for the Arcadia Unified School District, and we are thrilled to be joined with our Superintendent, Dr. Vannasdall. Dr. Vannasdall, good afternoon. How are you?
Always good to join you, Ryan.
Thanks so much for being here, and it's been a long time since we've actually done a coronavirus update and had to do one, and I think from my perspective, that's a good thing. We've seen some consistency and nothing too major as far as news and changes. So everything has been somewhat steady, as much as steady can be in 2020. We're all dealing with the fires and everything happening in our area, but we thought we'd just touch base about where we're at. We talked about reevaluating every 30 days or so to let people know kind of where we're at and where we're headed. So it's hard to believe it's mid-September already, school's underway, and things seem to be going pretty good.
Yeah, they have, Ryan, and I appreciate you mentioning that. I do want to start by mentioning that our thoughts are with all of our Arcadia school family members, especially those up in the foothills that have been directly impacted by the fires, whether they've had to evacuate or be on evacuation warning. We've been thinking about you and want you to know that we were preparing to do our part and joining and partnering with the city to provide any resources and support that we could. So looks like right now that it may be going the other direction, but we're not out of the woods yet. So we'll continue to think about you and prepare for the worst.
So Dr. Vannasdall, our team and staff has been doing distance learning now since we started school. We're mid-September now. We're hearing some things. There's a new system from the governor in California as far as reopening guidelines, a 4-tiered color system. Los Angeles County, we're still one of the worst in the state. We are purple. I know these systems, they change and they're a little bit confusing at times. Where are we at with distance learning and the talk of returning and all those sort of things that people are curious about?
Yeah, well, we don't have a lot of new information, Ryan, from the last time. And I think that's a good thing, at least for now, that we've had some time as we started school to kind of settle in with this virtual learning environment. We're really doing this update specifically because we were open about the fact that when we made the decision to open virtually, we needed to give our staff and our families that time to prepare and know how we were going to open and how we were going to operate for at least a few weeks. So people weren't living in that environment of it's this decision today, is it going to change tomorrow? And we know so much information out there is changing rapidly that we wanted some comfort and consistency. So we made the decision that we would go into a virtual environment, opening school, and we would remain that way for at least a month. And then at about a 30-day window in, we would reevaluate. So we're entering that 30-day window. And so it is just important to kind of update where we are. As you just mentioned, Ryan, once again, we just got a new set of guidelines by the governor. This time a colored 4-tiered system of guidelines that ensure that we understand what formula is being used to determine when we will be allowed to return to school physically, which, as we continue to remind everyone, is very different depending on what county in California you live in. So right now in LA, we are in purple, which is the top worst tier to be in as far as that hope to return to school. And that tier is based on numbers of cases still, percentages of cases per 100,000 residents, hospitalizations. There's a number of variables that they're looking at. And we have to get below a certain formula and hold that for 14 days in LA County before we will be lowered to the next, to the red tier. At which time the health department in LA will allow us to apply for a waiver to begin to return to school physically in some hybrid fashion, of which we don't know that number yet. And I'll mention a little bit more about that in a minute. But to be clear, right now in LA and for us in Arcadia, we are not able to apply for that permit to return physically. So there's nothing we can do right now but continue doing exactly what we're doing in a virtual environment. Clearly, we hold out hope that soon, with some positive trends of those numbers coming down, that we will be able to soon apply. Once we are able to apply, I also want to kind of give some reality to what that timeline might look like. I mentioned that we won't know exactly what that hybrid looks like. That's because the guidelines continue to change. So the guidelines put out by the health department continue to change week by week. So we can't predict at the time that we are able to apply for a waiver, for a permit to return physically. We don't know what those guidelines are going to be. And those guidelines will specifically direct us on how many students will be allowed on each campus, or what kind of percentage of the total school population will be allowed to return. So I'm sharing that because a lot of people are asking, what's the plan? What is the hybrid plan when we return? And although we've been working on, getting all of our personal protective equipment in place, and our custodians, our support staff, training teachers, there's a lot of things behind the scenes that are going on to prepare for that time. There is no way right now we can predict what restrictions will be in place when we're allowed to return. And that will be the driver for the schedule. An example of that is, imagine the high school. If we're told that you can have 20% students on campus at a time, that's going to look very different than any schedule we would create that would say 50% of the students, half at a time. So there's a lot that we can do right now, but unfortunately, there's a lot that we could, if we spent time even trying to predict or guess that, it would probably be wrong. It would be wasted time. So I'm reminding people and encouraging people to just let's settle in with where we are with the virtual right now. When the time comes that we don't control, when we're told that we're allowed to apply for that waiver. And by the way, that waiver right now is a TK through 6. So it's not even for any grades above 6th grade. But when that time comes, we will be prepared to begin that process. And that process is going to be collaborative. We'll be talking to parents, PTAs. We'll be talking to, of course, to staff, all of our organizations, to figure out the best way to do that and make that happen, where everyone feels safe and we continue to maintain our priority, which is keeping everyone healthy. And the most important thing that I keep reminding people is we want to return in a way that is sustainable. It's not going to help any of us. The impact and the disruption that we're seeing around the country when people are rushing right back, and then 3 days later or 2 weeks later, there's another spike, and everyone then is back on lockdown, and we have to close the doors again. That's going to be more disruptive than even going back in the first place. So I want to remind people that it is going to be a slow process. But I assure you that as we create that process, we will be confident that we will be able to maintain everyone's safety, and we'll be able to bring students back.
Thanks for that clarification, Dr. Vannasdall. Appreciate it. And as you know, while we're in distance learning mode right now, the planning for when we do eventually come back has been happening since probably March, April. We were just in a training today with our district nurse and all of our principals, all of the supervisors across the district. That's going out to more people. So there's a lot of things happening to prepare for that day, but there's still, as you mentioned, so many factors and considerations at this time. One thing I'd like to also get some clarification on for some people that are curious and have asked us, they're seeing the date September 14th, Monday, maybe in the news or on social media, for LA County is allowing some groups of students, in particular special education students in small cohorts and that sort of thing, to happen. And the first date they have for that is September 14th. So where are we at with that, and even bringing in small groups of specialized certain groups of students?
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. I know that's been on a lot of people's mind because that's something they're hearing in the media. First of all, this exception that's being made to this rule of no return physically for students. This exception is being made for our most vulnerable students, and this is something that all of us superintendents have been advocating for. Is this group of students, and we're talking about our students with special needs. And oftentimes, a lot of those needs are medical, whether it's physical therapy, speech therapy, a lot of these different things that cannot be done in a virtual environment. And so we've been advocating for bringing those students, whether it's a singular student, one at a time, or a small cohort, back to school in a very safe, healthy way, but to be able to provide some of those services or even assessments. And I'll give you an example. that has been happening since we got that green light to be able to begin that process. But again, that to begin that process means we're now beginning to develop what that could look like. And so an example is we just had a group of teachers with all of our support staff and our district nurse doing mock student assessments between a teacher and a teacher acting like a student, and having the nurse watch to see what kind of natural behaviors might happen that would put someone in jeopardy of a situation that may not be safe. So we're going through all those steps and just being very cautious to ensure that we're prepared. We've kind of been walked through these motions before we ever bring a student back on campus physically. And so, I'm proud of those precautions and that level of care that our staff is taking. But please know that that takes time. It's not as simple as soon as the county says, okay, you can come back, and we just start calling and bringing in students. That wouldn't be responsible. But I assure you that it will begin to happen very soon. But when we're ready for that. So to be clear, Ryan, there will not be students returning on the 14th on Monday. However, the green light has given our staff the ability to begin that process, and they're working as fast as they can. And they will begin to bring the students back the second that they feel that we have all our protocols in place. So thank you for clearing that up.
Yeah, and I had a good conversation with Dr. Mahoney, our director of special education, and our district nurse, Mrs. Newkirk, this week too, about that and the September 14th and what they're doing. And there's still a lot of things that great example about the assessments. And so there's still so many factors to work out before we get to a safe point to bring any type of students back. So just like, the regular population, all students not coming back anytime soon, it's probably the same thing for them with this September 14th thing. We're not near there yet. There's so many factors and determinations and protocols they're working through to make sure it's perfect before we come back, as perfect as it could be. So just a clarification on that. We really appreciate that. Another thing I just want to touch on briefly, Dr. Vannasdall, is while our coronavirus updates from the district level have lessened over time, which is, I believe, a great thing, and the schools and principals and our teachers and staff are doing a remarkable job communicating and getting the information to our parents and students. We do have our board meetings every 2 weeks where all of your assistant superintendents, myself, and some department heads give coronavirus and department updates, which involve a lot of the planning as far as their individual perspectives and departments with reopening of schools and what that's looking like. So people can always watch those live via YouTube, our YouTube channel, or go back and watch the recording at their convenience. So there are those bi-weekly updates that people can get as well.
Yeah, and I absolutely encourage people, this is an opportunity. I don't think a lot of people understand and recognize. They view a school district basically just the teaching and learning, and don't understand that we are running a small city. When you think of the facilities, everything that goes into support student learning, it's amazing. And so logging on and being able to watch that report from 360 of our departments, you really do learn a lot about the school district, where we are, the status, what we're thinking, and get to hear from our school board members that are representing our community. So I encourage you to please do that.
All right, Dr. Vannasdall, thanks so much for your time. I echo your sentiments with the wildfires going on, a lot of evacuations. You yourself were evacuated a few weeks ago. The fires are back. Everyone's dealing with the smoke and ash, so we wish everyone the best. Reach out to any of us if you need any support, and we will be here for you, and we hope we all get through this safely. 2020 continues, but we are all here together and definitely better together. So thank you so much, Dr. Vannasdall. Greatly appreciate your time as always.
Absolutely, Ryan. Thank you.